So, so I thought I'd make some more continuing conversation about my last topic. It's one of the reasons why, when I was 19, that drew me into this whole paranoia of someone was going to probably out to get me. I never caused any enemies. I didn't have very many enemies. I didn't have any enemies that I knew wanted to retaliate against me. I knew people wanted to steal from me. But I recall um, I recall many years ago that when this whole situation happened, it was very unsettling emotionally because I didn't understand. I talked about this on other videos in great details about it many years ago. So I don't want to repeat myself too many times because I believe that everything I'm watching these videos and everything that I'm doing has been recorded. And there was some sort of investigation where, like, I didn't know who he was associated with. It didn't make any sense at all. He just disappeared. He just left. And the family knew him better than I did, and he had a girlfriend he was living with, and he had a kid. He had a child, and he brought his kid over several times to the house. And he was a good father. He was a young 18, 19-year-old kid with a kid. And I believe he had a sister. He had a sister that lived. Um, um, and she came over, I think, once or twice. I'd seen her a couple of times. And everybody was family oriented, but it's one of the reasons I was so, paranoid, because I didn't really trust anybody. When I finally moved into my apartment, I was 20 years old. I didn't want to associate with anyone that was involved with drugs. Anyone was involved in drugs. Anyone besides focusing more on positive things in my career and making my life. Because my dad had just died, and I got kicked out of the house, and all this money stuff was going on. That it was. I really believed that somebody was going to come and do, because I don't know what the situation was, because I was told that it was a family member that did it. And I talked about this because Mary's the one that told me. Mary Zarate said that it was a family member of the Zarate families that was down the line somewhere that had like a friend or something that had done that. And I didn't understand what the situation was. But I don't know. It's very confusing to me because Mary told me, like, when I was living in my early 20s, saying that I was living in my apartment and saying that Jesse had been killed he had been murdered and shot at a bar, and they had broken up several years. He went after Mary and Jesse broke up. Jacob's dad, they broke up. He got really depressed. Went back to the hood and doing what he was doing before, selling drugs, like hardcore, like selling cocaine and crack, and went down a really bad drug world of more narcotics and dangerous thugs, and never heard from him again. And years later I was told that he got into a fight at a bar, which was very much like him, and they killed him. And that's the last I heard from him. That's what I was told. And I was like, oh, and another sad situation, and didn't know, because I didn't have any family at this time. I was taking care of myself. I didn't want to bring anybody to my apartment. And I was very scared of somebody wanting to, because I didn't understand how. You don't understand that I didn't know who these people were. And I told Mary at the time, it's like, if you ever need questions, police want to question me, I was all more than willing to tell anything and everything, but they never showed up to my house. They never gave me a call. I kept in communication with Rodrigo and a few times, and that was pretty much it, and he was a really good guy. He was a family guy, and we were good friends with Robert, and we became closer friends once Robert passed away, and he was fighting professional boxing on TV. On Univision, and I never heard from him. And he was a good guy. It bothered me a lot. I carried that for many years of, like, depressed, depressed how like it didn't make any sense. I knew this guy, he was a good guy, he was a family guy, and I didn't know he had, the last few months he was alive, he started selling weed, which I didn't know about, and I knew he was the guy that was installing like cable TV. He was started to drive his pickup truck, driving cable TV in his truck and installing satellites for people to have Dish Network, and he was making really good money that way. And he said he found a job in the newspaper or something like that, and all of a sudden that happened, and that was it. And it was so many years ago, and I didn't understand, because the family, I think, was also, everyone was shaking up by it, because it was kind of one of their own family members that had planned it or done something like that, and I was clueless to that world, to that side of the world that I didn't know about. I knew him very well, but it didn't make any sense how, because he was a family guy. He had his kid, he enjoyed having his son, and he'd carry him, on his shoulders, and and he was very father figure toward his kid, what he showed, and he matured very quickly, and but he was on the road to success, and I don't know what happened. I just know that he got involved with somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody, and they plotted against him. And I never knew. It was just 20 years ago. 20 years ago that this happened. God even knows if that was all a lie. Because if I was told Jesse died and he didn't, because I was told Jesse died in my early 20s. Like I was like 20, yeah, I was in my early 20s that he was killed. I was like 21 or 22. And I was told that Jesse was killed in a bar fight and shot. And it didn't really surprise me, because he was that kind of a person. He seemed like somebody that was destined to want to die by the gun. And because Daniel Box knew who Billy was very well, so did Ricky. And Ricky didn't know him that well. I think he maybe met him once, but Daniel knew who he was because we all hung out together. And never heard from any of the situations again. Everybody just split up. Everybody's just trying to survive, get a job, apartments. People are now shifting from staying with their parents to getting their own apartment, and college, and girlfriends, and I wouldn't say girlfriends necessarily, but everyone's just trying to survive, make a life of themselves. And everyone split up. Chris Dotson knew him very well as well, hung out with him. Yeah, I heard Chris Dotson moved to Houston or Austin, started working for a weed shop, and that was it. And nobody really trusted each other anymore, because I know Chris Dotson was selling heavy amounts of weed, but he was an associate with Billy, to my understanding. And people I was around weren't killers. Jesse was the only person. But when I was 30, I think I was 36 years old or 30. It was after the DMC. Yeah, was it after the DMC? I think it was right after the DMC. I went to Lawrence, Kansas, where I saw Michaela. I went there in like 3 or 4 separate occasions throughout the last 7 years. And at the third time that I went there, the fourth time I went there and I saw Michaela, my half sister, I saw Jesse. It was Jesse. And I was like, and one of the ways that I knew it was Jesse, and I got very scared, because I was like, is this an identical twin? Is someone playing a sick game, or am I losing my mind? And it was Jesse. And I remember him seeing with him the brain use. It was him. His character, how he had his bunk and room set up, it was him. And I was like, and I remember him saying something to me, and he was like, you ready to get to work or something? And I just like froze. I just stayed in my bed quiet and didn't say anything. He's like, what the fuck? And he seemed kind of, I don't know if he seemed the character of someone that did too much drugs, because he did a lot of cocaine, and he started smoking crack. I know a lot, and he fit the criteria. I think he did too much drugs. and it was him. And I remember him making an impersonation voice. He made an impersonation voice that I only saw him do when I was with him when I was like 16, 17 years old with Robert. And he made that same pronunciation, like trying to hide his identity. And I think he knew who I was. And I don't know, I know he was kind of like, kooky a little bit. For those that knew who he was, know what I'm talking about. He was kooky, and he was the one that trained Jacob to be a boxer at a very young age. Jacob ended up being a professional he won first place Golden Glove boxing in Dallas, which was monumental. And I know his dad would have been so proud of him. And I told him that when I talked to him when I was like 35 over the phone for like 20 minutes, that, don't go the wrong path, and always to appreciate life, and your dad would be very proud that you won the Golden Gloves. He won the Golden Gloves in Dallas. Can you believe that? And that was like Jesse's dream. And that was like Robert and us talked about it. It's like for him to win the Golden Gloves was like, wow, like we didn't just do this for anything. We didn't just do this for nothing. And he knew Billy very well, and pretty good. He used to come over, but anyway, that was the last of it. And I moved in my apartment. I was in my early 20s, and I saw Marco's sister. I used to hang out with Marco and Edward, and Marco's sister, his family, moved across the apartment complex, lived there for 3 years, and I moved there. And I never talked to them because I knew that Marco was involved with smoking weed, and I think he did cocaine a few times, but I didn't want to hang around with that drug world anymore. Anyone that was involved in any of that, and I never talked to them. I talked to his sister a couple times, but I saw Marco had quick talks, but I didn't want to deal with any drugs anymore, at all with anyone. I just didn't want to mess with that world, and I was trying to make something of my life, get my life together, live more positively, and but I thought I'd make a video on this because it's so frightening in the places that I've been all over throughout the U.S. alone, and how often I lived alone and lonely, and the things that people did to me that I thought people were really trying to reach out and help, and I was trying to protect myself, and I really wanted to build my life to reconnect with Alicia and be successful and be like, oh, I got graduated from college, or I'm successful now, and it never happened. Oh, I got married, and nothing like that. I never was successful, and at least in any of the things that most of us think that we are. And the last time I talked to them, I was 27, working for the federal government, and we all went. Alicia, Jesse's brother was there, who was dating Christina. Alicia, Rodrigo's kid, Jacob. I don't know, Rodrigo's kid, but yeah, his little infant baby, and Jacob was there. And Mary, Casey next to me, and Daniel. And Mary looked at me, and when I asked her, and I said, and she goes, yeah, I told you that, Jesse was killed in a bar fight, right? He goes, yeah, I remember. And she was looking at her phone, like, is somebody tapping my phone or something like that? And we got along all great, fine with conversation, but I could tell that there was a fight, because I knew the dilemma between the fight of Christina, Mary, and Alicia. There was a big scuffle for money in the house property that they had. I don't know what the story to that ever was. I didn't ask questions, but I knew enough to know that there would have been told that there was a huge scuffle and battles between money, who was going to get the house, and all the things, and it just turned out really bad for all of them. And some of them hated each other, but since they were sisters and they grew up and they were Robert Sr., they started communicating, and they ended up, I think, forgiving each other to some level of degree. I know I've seen pictures of Alicia and Mary. They got along, sisters, and that was family. So they got over their whatever, whoever took what. I don't know the details to that, but I just know it didn't turn out good. When it all happened, it wasn't sunshine and flowers, that's for sure. And they didn't talk to each other for a number of years. And but I don't understand why Mary had told me that, because I saw him at the shelter, and as soon as I got on the crisis line, he was there for like 2 weeks, and he'd occasionally show up, and he had his bunk bed, and he looked like he had just gotten out of jail or something. And I was on the crisis line, and I said, I think that's Jesse. I said, I don't know. I was scared because I was nervous, and I was telling these people over the phone. I said, this guy, I said, this that looks like Jesse. I was told that he died. I was told by Mary, and who else told me this? I think maybe Christina told me also. I think it was just Mary, but Mary was the one who told me, said he was killed, and he was shot. He was killed in a bar fight. And I'm thinking to myself, when I've seen him there at the shelter, I'm like, why is he there? Like, what the heck? I was told he was killed. I was told he was shot. Why would... And I don't understand, because people, I don't know, I was very close to the family. I knew that, like, Jesse, he got kicked in and out of the house several times, and they ran him off whenever Robert Zarate had just died, and he tried talking to Robert Sr., and they threw him out of the house. Like, it was bad. You could tell. The last time I saw him at that house, he looked like he gave up when he left. I remember that very clearly. I remember him looking like, when Mary was in the kitchen, and he was like depressed. And he was like, I'm gonna go. He had the look on his face and his expression that he was gonna go hurt himself. That's what it looked like. 100%. It looked like he was gonna go hurt himself. He looked like, I'm gonna go. He looked like he was gonna go hurt himself. 100% on that. 100%. It looked like he was gonna go hurt himself. And I knew that was drugs, and he was gonna throw his life, because they didn't want to talk to him, because he had already, like, at this point, stolen money for crack and took the video games from Jacob one day to sell drugs. He's addicted to it, and ended up leaving, and then showing up back into the picture for a couple of months, and they didn't want anything to do with him, and they just abandoned him. Everyone, because he was too cooped up in drugs. The drugs were really consuming him bad. But I was in total shock when I was in there. And I remember seeing him with a couple of Nike sneakers, brand new, some I think they were Jordans. I don't know, they were really expensive sneakers. And I remember he was there for 2 weeks, and as soon as I got on the crisis line, I was at this Mexican restaurant, I was saying, that's Jesse, I was told he died. I don't know, it looks exactly like him. I was told he died. I don't know, why is he still alive? I said, it doesn't make any sense. Why would Mary lie to me? Like, unless that was an identical twin that I don't know about. Again, maybe another identical twin or something. And I remember him when I was there. There was one day or 2 days that I was walking, and I looked out the back door. It had a little window, and there was a black woman, and looked like they were teaching a class and like, it was crazy looking. It looked to like 2 other adults, and Jesse was like, he looked like a kid that was just listening, like, how the life went. I don't know, it was weird. It was crazy. It looked like this lady was teaching a class outside, giving mentorship to him. And I was like looking at him, and I was like, and they didn't know I was looking. I could see through the window, and I was like, it didn't make any sense. And I just stayed away, sat on my bed, and was just observing him. And all I could think to myself, that's Jesse. That looks like Jesse. I don't know, it looks like Jesse. And at this point, I'm mentally very lost in the idea of why is it that all this attention is going on, all these things, and nothing's ever had a surprise? What are the odds of all the places I'm traveling to the United States and world and homeless that I could come in contact with Jesse again? What are the chances of me coming in contact with Michaela, not knowing about what's going on? Someone is organizing this. It is not an accident. It could be happen a chance that maybe knowing how Jesse was, he probably heard about the shelter and decided to go there. To this day, it doesn't make rational sense. Like, I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, in 2 years, though, we're going to put my family together. I'll get to see Julian's twin, Frankie, and my mom all together, and then introduce what the reason why her identical twin has been fooling me this whole time with her impersonation. Why I haven't seen my mother in 20 years but once. And I don't know the story to it, still to this day. All I know is that my life was never worthy ever again after the age of 20 years old, or after my mother's accident, to never see my mother again, but only once that I ever saw her again. And it was only when I had cancer, or to go check to see if I was going to have cancer, because I had some symptoms of cancer, and went to the hospital, and I went to the Mexican restaurant. And when I went to this Mexican restaurant, believe it or not, this is who I saw: Khloe Kardashian, and like a Mercedes, you know those 200, 300, like $500,000 Mercedes armored looking cars. It was Kardashian, and it was some guy that was in the car with her, and they drove right past us like this. And I remember very distinctively looking in the car, and it was Khloe Kardashian. And I went to go see my mother. We ate at the restaurant, and her twin drove me there, and she was acting disgusting to me. And I'm like, okay, let's just eat at the dinner. We go there, and then she goes to the restroom, and then comes back, but it's not her, it's my mother. And I just know that I could sense this is my mother. When I was like, no, this is my mother. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know that it's my mother's identical twin, and I could tell that when I'm talking to her, she's not talking the same. She's not talking like she's being restrained by somebody and someone's trained her. And I could tell she's looking around me, and I can tell the people that are around her are like, you do what we tell you to do, Celestine. You see, Hector was a bad, no, we put the gay community in charge of your identical twin. Fool fuck your son over. You see, we're the angels that gave you everything. I just remember seeing this internal look in my mother's eyes that she knew that I was her son. This person that showed up was not my mother. Because whenever we got up and left together, she said, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I said, okay, Mom, I'll wait outside. I'm going to go to the car. So I go to the car, wait there for a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden my mom's twin shows up. And I could tell she looked different. And I'm like, she's walking fast, she seemed very alert, very different. But I could tell when I ate at that restaurant, 100%, I saw Khloe Kardashian in the car. And it was some Mexican guy that looked like Billy. I'm not saying that there's a relation with Billy and the murder, but there was a guy in the car that looked like Billy. And it was Khloe Kardashian. It was near the, what was it, the Fire Wheel? The Fire Wheel, I think it's called Fire Wheel, a city or a mall. Fire Wheel Malls, I think it is called. I can't remember. But I remember seeing Khloe Kardashian. And I was, at this, I'm like, what the heck's going on? There's somebody with a lot of money that's doing some sort of control, supervision, protection, harmful things as well. And I necessarily don't think it was Khloe. I think Khloe is a very loving and kind-hearted person. But I don't know the story to this. I still don't know. I don't know who's sponsoring the money, who's bribed, but it was very evil. And I don't think they had anything to do with what was going on. I think they got used, if they did help my mother. I think someone used that. But I thought I'd make a video, and but obviously my life was never worthy to not see my mother for 20 years. It was never worthy. Whoever decided that, there's no fixing. Because I knew that's not what my mother wanted. I very much feel like my mother died. To allow Sarah Cooper to get involved in my mother and her kids like that, I will never hear the crying of what my mother's pain of that. Never. And I think forgiveness will happen, and it did. I know my mother to the core about that. for what Sarah and Kenneth and Ken Cooper did to my mother and me and Frankie, it was like killing my mother and killing me and going after her babies and killing them. I never could express this more. For them to participate in any language, anything, there's probably nothing more that I probably hurt my mother more than having Sarah and Ken there at the hospital. But had I not had them at the hospital, they would have faked the whole situation with her twin. All I know is that when I talk to my mother, what I do know is when I talk to my mother at the Mexican restaurant, the waiter was not very polite and seemed to want to take control of my mother and accuse me of the energy and vibes that they were giving. But when I tried talking to her, she was not communicating very well. She was not communicating like, she entirely, when in her presence, looked like you do as we tell you to do and what you're trained to do, brainwashed. When we first walk into the restaurant, I look to my right and I see two couples that look like Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And they're trying to behave physically with looking at the menus like they were nice angel people. And they were just, and I knew that, and I got nervous and scared because they looked just like them and they were getting these actors to do this. But when I sat down at that dinner table, she did not look like, when I tried to talk, she didn't want to talk. Like she looked like she was being restrained. And I remember she kept on looking at some other people like they're controlling. I felt I was looking to my mother. I was looking into my mother's eyes the same similar way that when my father committed suicide and I went to a mental hospital and he was lost and he barely could identify me. He could barely. There was something inside what they would call, people think, I don't know if you want to call it the soul or the mind, that knew something that my existence, that there was a connection or relative life of us. That's what I remember seeing in my mother. And I remember thinking, and I was there and I was like, and I tried to just keep things going because I don't want to disturb. I don't have very much time, and I'm like, why does she look different? Because I don't know she's an identical twin. I said, why do you look different all of a sudden? There's something, how do you just look, you look different? There's something different, I don't know. And she looked like she had a little bit more weight. She gained a little bit more weight all of a sudden. And I could tell that the way that she was walking and the way that she was sort of carrying herself was that of someone that was entirely in control of her. Like, okay, so this thing, like when she walked and I saw her walking, she was just kind of like this, like, hi Hector. Like she was very not in control. That somebody had, I tell you what you're gonna do, this is what happens, you don't know what goes on. And she had been beaten so many times by this person who was doing this to her, and so many faggots and transgenders and Barack Obama and all this. My mother's head gone. But when I talked to her, she was not registering. And I got asked her questions, and she was very short. Like she couldn't almost like. There was like a part of her she couldn't complete sentences, and it's easy for them to get away with it because that's exactly what was happening. And when I was talking to her, she looked like she was entirely under somebody else's control, like entirely under somebody else's control. And she was not like that. She was never like that growing up. She was not. It wasn't until her accident happened, and I never saw her again. I've seen my mother's accident happen when I was 18 years old, and then I got kicked out of the house. I haven't seen my mother in 23 years, but once at that restaurant. I didn't see her at anywhere. So when I thought I saw her at Robert's funeral, I don't think that was my mother. It didn't even look like my mother. That was my mother's twin. Do you know how disrespectful it is to do that to Robert Sr. Zarate before he dies? Because Robert Sr. Zarate, he didn't say, hi, Celestina. He didn't say that to my mother. they stayed very quiet, and he just looked at her because I could see them from a far distance. And my mother's twin was like, she was getting, everybody was walking, and she seemed to kind of want to take the attention to her, and it did it in front of all these people. And I was like, what? And I was just sitting there, and I didn't say anything, and I was just thinking, what are you doing? Like, please don't do this. Like, you're, this is at a, my best brother, my brother is sitting in a casket, and the Robert Cerati family's at the very front of the seat, and there's some people walking by, how you doing? And I talked about this, and I don't think that was because she looked the same body shape, the same hairline, the same body, was that of an identical twin. And he didn't say hi to her. He just, didn't say anything. So I don't know what the story to this situation, other than it was very hurtful. I can never express how disrespectful that is to the family and to Robert to have done that. Never would have approved her like that, because I was very close to Robert. He was my brother. And people have no idea I was the closest friend he had. I knew his inside families better than anyone you could ever imagine. Just family members, met people from Oak Cliff. I went to church out in Oak Cliff all the time. Went out to live and spent the night several weekends in Oak Cliff at some houses in the ghettos back in the day. But that was it. And I thought I'd make a conversation about this because, all these things and events that have played out, I don't understand why nobody ever came to try to fix 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. In 23 years, I have seen my mother once, and I was extremely close, protecting her. I did all these things. I've only had no communication with her, and I've been betrayed and lied by the psychologists and these people that did this to my mother. And they're beating the fuck out of me to turn every single thing you can imagine to the grain of a fucking sand against me. Everything you could fucking imagine. The emotions, the mental words, the reverse psychology methods that they were doing. They just did some reverse psychology methods over the phone with me a few earlier this morning. I was speaking to someone, making a phone call, and they were threatening me, trying to behave like Sarah Cooper, and they were playing reverse psychology, and I was looking for a car auction place. But my life was never worthy enough of all that I ever did for my mother, and all the stories and all the things, and my dad and everything that had happened, me being raped and Frankie. My mother was not close to Joni and Lupe, and she was closer to me and would have trusted them more. So if any of these relatives showed up, you backstab my mother at the highest level degrees, and I'm right now, I cannot tell you more details because I'm scared of retaliation, of even more in-depth details of certain people that will get you to believe and understand why my mother would not trust these people. And whoever was implying these messages to the psychologist, oh, don't hate Hector, he's a piece of shit, they went along with it. And then I don't know if some of my relatives will continue to hang out with my mother at Christmas or Thanksgiving or what, but that is not the story. And that's not what happened. They showed up to Christmas and Thanksgiving. I was the closest, her 3 kids. And all of a sudden, I don't see my mother for 23 years. A mansion gets built. I get raped by a Lupe's cousin. And I can't explain how some of them are real shisty and real greedy for money. Because it's not about just taking, it was about ownership and control because my dad was gay, but they sabotaged the situation because it was jealousy. And they didn't, a lot of my other relatives, they hated me. They didn't like me because I was so protective of my father, and I was protective of my mother, and they wanted my control. So whatever it is that implied anything, you don't have any, these identical twins are showing up, and they take ownership of all this relatives and aunts and relatives and other distant family members are coming in applying information and I'm not in the picture and I'm her son, and you trust them over their opinion over me, then my life was never worthy to talk to my mother because I was trying to reach out to her. And if I tried reaching out to her a bunch of times, they would have had me just talk to her identical twin and it wouldn't have mattered. But I do know it was like my mother died. It was like I felt like a sense of my mother was gone, and there was a slice part of me that felt like crying because it was like you can't help yourself anymore. You can't take care of yourself anymore. And she looked brainwashed. She looked brainwashed. And I could see how President Barack Obama and his wife and his one of his transgender kids were sitting at a dinner table waiting for me to come into the entrance. And I could see how they were acting, looking at the menus like, oh, just nice people. Well, we're just, we're brainwashing, fucking your mother in the ass. And, it's Ken Cooper and Sarah Cooper. And that's just American flag because a Marine got shot and burned in Iraq. I had to make political power decisions. And they were just lottie-dottie. And I looked away very quickly because I got scared when I first walked in. I was like, God damn it, goddamn president. I was like, the Obamas. It's like, this is my fucking mother. And I was just thinking to myself, and I didn't say anything. I just kept my cool. And I remember seeing Ken Coopers exactly look alike when I walked into the door next to a couple tables from the register booth. Just make sure that I could see who was really in charge. It's hard because they're turning everything against me, and you're never going to hear the story, and they made them all into heroes, and they carried the red carpet everywhere and gave it to their kids and everything, and I was the hero. I was her son. Her twins are not related. I'm not their kids. My mother is not going to let me talk to her because they knew they could poison her head. Get the other twins. You see how connected they are? Poison her head. Oh, well, oh no, it's the same. Look, we're just going to change communication. And that's what they did. I know when I talked to Jillian when I was living in this apartment when I was 27 and my mother's identical twin showed up because it wasn't my mother. And I remember looking at her and she didn't look like she looked exactly like my mother, but you could tell there was something different. She was very alert, very moving, like she never even had an accident. And I remember Julian looking over at her, and he was like, what are you doing? Like, what the fuck are you doing? And I remember when she walked in, because she put all her clothes inside the closet when I was living in Julian's apartment, and Julian walked away from my mother, his twin. And I could tell by looking at Julian, he didn't want to say anything, but he did not connect with that twin. And he knew. When I look at it now, because Julie knows us growing up with my mother, this twin was showing up scolding Julian, and Julian had the sense to protect me. And I could tell when I was around, he did. I could sense that he had the sense to identify me that, no, that's my mother's son. And he was looking at her like, and I remember he's like, doing? Like, what are you? And he was very bothered. And he was like, yeah, she could put her stuff in her clothes over there. And he was upset. He didn't look like he was getting along. And he didn't tell me. Julie knows, but he didn't tell me anything. But I can say this, that, Julian was not, he was looking like, what are you doing? Because she came in there like she was trying to order my mother what to do, Julian what to do, and what was going to happen, the communication between me and Julian, and she was trying to sever that. And it was right in the middle of the situation where I was deprived of all this money and all these things, had nothing. And this person did not show any empathy. I could tell you this person is the most, they're going to say that she needs to be a bitch because she needs to be a bitch. No, this person is not empathetic of it. This person is very disgusting. This is a lesbian. This is a fucking lesbian. And this is not my mother. And I remember feeling like, I don't know how to express it. I don't know how vibes and energy communicate, but this was not my mother. I was like, this is not my mother. This is not who you were. I don't remember her. I don't know what it is. Yeah, of course I was right the whole time. Because then you just fuck my mother in the ass again for President Barack Obama because, oh, just use the fucking twins and then brainwash everything and then brainwash me, turn everything against me and then re-identify the situation and you fucking shit all over my mother without ever knowing because my mother is fucking mentally damaged. Oh, you were just protecting her though, huh? Everything that they're doing with the electronic devices, the threatening phone calls and reverse psychology and is to entirely make this about Ken and Cooper heroes and turn this all against me because they know these faggots and transgenders are involved and they knew they could penetrate that with the identical twins going after my mother. This is my mother. I don't know what in hell they could have done this. This is the worst, the pain that they could have done to my mother. My mother, what they practiced is very evil. Very evil. My mother I knew how she behaved with her child. I knew that she wasn't identifying with that child. You're having a twin disregard my mother and what she ever was because, oh, we bought her a house. Oh, no, that's my family. No, that's my family. No, that's mine. No, that's mine. I did this for 3 years. I wasn't there for Christmases. I wasn't there for Thanksgiving. No matter how much I tried, I was being pushed away. Yeah. You trust him so much that it's a friend, and then they just do investigation again. Oh no, Patricia was someone else that had nothing to do with Lupe. Bullshit. And they just keep making things up. All they're doing is beating the shit out of me to make sure that I start making up whatever it is that they want and lies about the relationship, about everything that had happened, and just psychology, and then that's theoretically, it's just this is what we need to do for safety for Ken Coop, for Sarah Coop, for Kenneth. They don't give a fuck about my life, but I think it's important for me to talk about for a while because I don't know what to think. I was not valued. Did not have value or worthy. I was not worthy enough to talk to my mother, to have any defense for her, because they went after the goddamn twins. And they're already setting me up. I know they're listening to this phone video I'm making. I know they have recording devices. And they're talking to her right now, poison her head even more and all this other shit, because this is about whatever they can poison and get away with. They're masterminding the situation. They knew everything I'm going to say is going to be like a detective attitude and investigation and try to take authority and manage the situation. And then they knew with that expression they could turn it around against me, and that's exactly what they're doing. I was entirely framed. But I know my mother was not wanting to talk, and it was like it was not because it's out of her own will. Like she looked like, when I saw her, there was an impression that I felt that she was in diapers as well. Like her body shape and the way that she was walking, I felt the sensation that she was like, I'm telling you that she was like this, because when I was talking to her and I was eating, she was talking, and like when she went to the dinner table, I'm telling you, this is what she did. She walks at the dinner table and she's like, oh, what do I do next, Ken Cooper? Okay, what do I do, Barack Obama? Is that my son? Oh no, okay, Barack Obama. Oh, okay, for president. Who did I get raped? You want a dead child? Like she had her hands and she's walking, like she's lost. Like, oh, okay, Barack Obama, you just threatened my son and I love you more. Oh, and you just president. Oh, Ken Cooper and Sarah Cooper, can you make sure Madison has a good life with Michelle? And and that's what's going on with Ken and transgenders. They were just all gay. This is the gay movement to cover it all up. This is exactly what her body's expression. She doesn't look like she's clear about what's going on. She sits down and I want to say she got up and she goes, oh, hold on, I have to go use the restroom. And when she said this, she's looking to the left of her and someone behind me, and she's like, oh, okay, I have to go to the bathroom now. And so someone is telling her, go to the bathroom. And she's like, oh, okay. I could tell by looking at her, like, she said, because wait on behind you. And she was standing up at the front booth. When I saw her look at the register people at the booth, she looked lost. She looked entirely like she was looking at these group of Mexican ladies, and a couple of them were transgenders. She entirely looked at them like, what do you want me to do and what do I say? Can you do it for me? Like, she walked up to him like, what do I do? Oh, okay, okay, that's what I do, that's what I am, that's what I, like, that's how she was when she approached. And this son of a bitch just taunted and killed my fucking mother. This motherfucker and this group of people. And they use the fucking twins because they're all gay. I don't know what to say, but they're the ones that didn't make me worthy to talk to her in person. It's not going to change anything. The time is gone and they didn't. And we only get worse as we get older. She's probably worse right now. Who's to say that she can't identify Julian and his twin? How do you know my mother can't identify Marco and the twin? Because when I was a kid and we were living in the house, I'd be walking in the house and my mother would sometimes be like, oh, hey, Frankie, it's Julian. And she would say this to Julian, that she was, oh, Hector, Julian, Julian. And she would do this when I was like 14 or 15 years old. I was about 15 or 16 years old. 14 to 16 years old, she did this a couple of times. She did this more when I was about 15 to 16 years old. Your mental memory, and as we age, gets worse. My mother, the last time I saw her when this happened, I was right when I got on disability. I don't know if it was right after it was right before I went to London. No, it wasn't after London. It was after London. I was 36 years old. Yeah, I was 36 years old. Maybe I just turned 37. I think it was 36 to 37 years old. Let me say 37 years old. And I remember going to Denver, Colorado, stayed at this house for 4 months all by myself, 3-bedroom house, and I had to go get a cancer checkup with Dr. Viverscala, my bone marrow transplant doctor. And I stopped by in Dallas before I went, when I took a flight there, because I was supposed to go to Auschwitz, but I had to call it off because I thought I had cancer. So when I went to Dallas to see my doctor, I went there, got the blood test, made a visit, and then before that visit, I went to go to the restaurant with my mother, and that's the only time that I saw her. So in 23 years, I haven't seen my mother, but I was 23 years old when I had my transplant, so I was 18 years old the last time I saw my mother, and she was when she had her leg crushed by the forklift. It bothers me. I can't even express the evil of the electronic devices and the poisoning things that these people are doing, because my mother would have never liked Obama and what these pigs would have done. The faggots and transgenders and how, yeah, just take care of it, do whatever the fuck you want, rape her again, she's stupid anyway, huh? And that's what they're doing. Oh, just cleaning up with psychology, yeah, for my black niggas, you know. Oh, it's not racist for the whites, for Ken Cooper. Because Ken Cooper was the one that was threatening me. His impersonation, he was sitting 2 chairs from the booth. And when I walked in, Ken Cooper's lookalike, he did this, he goes, like threatening toward the person he was talking. He didn't look at me. He might have glanced at me. I can't remember if he did, but he knew as soon as I walked in with my mother, he goes like this. He goes like engaging, like he's in control. So when I go sit down with my mother, it's to say, watch how you behave, because Ken Cooper's the one that was putting the impression of who's really in control, because it's Ken Cooper and white power. I told you about white detective who let Frankie get raped, and we're going to all lie about it. We're all going to lie about Kenneth. We're all going to lie about Sarah Cooper and how those motherfuckers, what they did to me, Julian, Frankie, especially my mother and me. Oh, but it's okay because you threatened me the last time I saw my fucking mother like that, huh? And that's one of the reasons I'm also getting nervous, because Ken Cooper's the one in charge right there, motherfuckers. Oh, but my mother gets fucking anally raped crying to me, but my mother watches her child, she's getting hit. Oh, but she knows that they know Frank is getting raped. Oh, police officer gun. Oh, shit, huh? That's the psychological shit and taunting crazy shit that they're fucking doing. If there's cameras, you'll know all the shit that's going on. There's so much shit that you don't understand that I have even trouble explaining into the details why I'm behaving the way that I have to because of the threats that I'm getting like that. That's the last time I see my mother and I see this fucking pig of a motherfucker who's they're making into a fucking hero and his goddamn fucking family saying that they didn't know and they did this and it was because and it was all lies. And it's because he's a detective and he's a white boy. He's a blonde haired, blue eyed fuck. I don't know what to do. But I was trying to reach out to my mother. But remember, Ken Cooper's in charge. Because when we sit at the dinner table, there's two white people. One that's sitting right over to the right of us that's also hoggy built. And he's acting like a Marine detective when he's engaging with that conversation to make sure, no, I tell you what to do. I tell you what to do. This is how we would control your mother. And then he was the hero. And they're doing this. And this is a white boy. Dirty blonde hair, cowboy looking, with a fucking, like, could have been a transgender, but it looked like a Madison looking female. But there's maybe one other white person. Maybe Michaela's mother was there. I remember turning around and saw maybe Michaela's mother. I don't know. I think I remember seeing a blonde woman there for a moment. But I wanted to say something about this because she was looking at the crowds of people, and I just remember she did not look like she was in control. She looked like, do what I tell you to do. Barack Obama's the one that fixed everything. Fuck your stupid bitch ass mother. I'm gonna tell everybody everything different, something else, while they enjoy their fucking lives. And that's what happened. You know, I'm perfectly fine with having a normal 8-hour job, and I miss having an 8-hour job, relaxed, working by myself in my own little world, and then visiting my mother of the last remains of what's her. But they don't let, for some reason, 23 years pass by, and the most precious years of my youth. Why wouldn't they do this another 10 years until I develop cancer or my mother dies? Which I don't think my mother's going to die. Twins don't die separately like that. But she was so brainwashed. She looked so submitted entirely. Like, I told you we're going to make everything up, and we got away with what we wanted. This is what we're doing. You're never going to find out what we did. You see? You see what happened? You see? And that's all they were fucking doing. When she showed up to that register, pull up the cameras. She approached it like she was entirely, what do I do? What is it you're going to do next? And then I'll go against Hector. I know how she is. She entirely was like, okay, I'll go against it because Barack Obama and Ken Cooper and Ken at the radio station for Michael Jackson. We just made an accident with political power and president. If you don't think you were taunting my mother enough with Sarah Palin over at the president's house, Congress, when I got there begging for my life to the governors and whatever I could. These people don't care about my mother's life. And since I was a kid, my mother never liked those people. Never enjoyed. They fed so much money and so much poison and used these psychological tactics to completely wipe off because they wanted that faggot pig to get away with what that family did. It was so calculated what Kenneth did and what these motherfuckers did. And these workers, they knew they were never going to point out to all these workers at my places I was going and the police that did this to me. There's nothing that I can do because I'm not the one that made that decision. They are the ones who are saying, I don't participate in it. I don't know. They're in control. They did say the story and who's in control. They're turning everything against me. Please believe me when I say this. They're using very dark psychology. I'm going to the grocery store. They're getting the carts and saying, you want this dead body? And they're behaving like they're throwing my dead sister into a casket, throwing the dead body at me because they want to make sure Sarah Cooper then gets away with their transgender communication community bullshit. But I swear to God, I was at the grocery store 3 days ago and they did this to me. And it's just riots of faggots and transgenders that are doing this. But they're turning every phone call, everything that I do, and everything, and because of what they did, because they're covering and they're lying. My mother doesn't want those pigs involved, and they're lying because it's the money and political power and brainwashing shit. They're turning everything against me to force me to make up lies, trying to get me to make up lies, trying to get me to say anything, to confuse the entire story and everything, to make sure they get what they want, because that person knew Frankie was getting raped, and so did Sarah, and Kenneth and David were doing all this. I could never explain that. You don't understand that was all a personal decision they made for hate that I had nothing to do with, but I had to pay the price for that. They're making everything up. Every phone call I make, every person I'm talking to over the phone, every fucking inch, there is retaliation in every way to go after my mother because she can't think anymore.